Okay, hello everyone. We will start our presentation of info management, and our topic today is communication and collaboration. We are from Group 8, consisting of myself, Nadine, Zia, Omar, Pandu, and Tafi. Next slide. So the table of contents today is the first learning objective, 18.1, is the communication process. Second learning objective, 18.2, improving collaboration through communication. The third learning objective, 18.3, managing conflict. And the last learning objective of this chapter is 18.4, managing negotiation. Okay, first is the communication process. Communication is an interpersonal process of sending and receiving symbols with messages attached to them. Communication is the means for connecting with people to the network, build relationships, and collaborate. It's also the glue that binds together the four functions. Planning is accomplished and plans are shared through the communication of information. Organizing identifies and structures communication links among people and leading positions. Leading uses communication to achieve positive influence over organization members and stakeholders. And last, controlling relies on communication to process information to measure performance results. There's also effective communication, which occurs when the sender's message is fully understood by the receiver. It also occurs at minimum cost in terms of resources expended. It's great when our communications are both effective and efficient, but trade-offs between the two are common. So there's the picture for the example. Next.
Okay, next is persuasion and credibility in communication. Communication is not only about sharing information or being heard, it is also about the intent of one party to influence or motivate the other. Persuasive communication results in a recipient agreeing with or supporting the message. Credible communication is described based on these three: trust, respect, and integrity in the eyes of others. Credibility is gained through expertise. When you are knowledgeable about an issue or have a successful track record dealing with similar issues, and it is also gained through relationship when you work well and get along with the people to be persuaded. Next is there are communication barriers. Noise is anything that interferes with the effectiveness of the communication process. And this isn't just a cross-cultural issue. Common sources of noise include: first is information filtering, which is the intentional distortion of information to make it appear more favorable to the recipient. Next is poor choice of channels. It is the pathway through which a message moves from sender to receiver. The third one is poor written or oral expression. Communication will only be effective when the sender expresses the message in a clearly understood way. Next, failure to recognize nonverbal signals. Nonverbal communication takes place through gesture, facial expression, body posture, eye contact, and the use of interpersonal space. Lastly is overloads and distraction. It is caused by the availability and abundance of electronic communications can make it hard to communicate well. Next is cross-cultural communication. Communicating across cultures requires a lot of sensitivity, awareness, and the ability to quickly learn local rights and wrongs. Ethnocentrism is a major enemy of effective cross-cultural communication. This is the tendency of this is the tendency to consider one's own culture superior to other cultures. It has three massive implications for communication. The first one is it may lead to poor listening. The second, it may cause someone to address or speak with others in ways that alienate them. And lastly, it may lead to the use of inappropriate stereotypes. There are four things that can spot ethnocentrism in conversation as arrogance, which is in tone, manners, gestures, and use of words. It also shows up as unintentional failures to respect cultural differences in nonverbal communication. Success in communicating and collaborating cross cultures requires a commitment to, first, cultural ethic, the use of appropriate manners, language, and lastly, behaviors when interacting with persons from other cultures.
Okay, move to the next objective, which is objective 18.2, improving collaboration through communication. Effective communication is essential as people work together in teams and organization. The better the communication, the more likely it is that collaboration will be successful. And next, there is transparency and openness. Communication transparency involves being honest and open in sharing accurate and complete information about the organization and what's happening in the workplace. The benefits of communication transparency start with decision making. Transparency also encourages motivation and engagement. Next, please. Okay, next, there is use of use of electronic media. Technology hasn't just changed how we communicate. It has created a social media revolution, one that can be performance asset or detriment, both personally and in the world of work. Text speak and emoticons may be the norm in social networks, but their use can be viewed as inappropriate in work settings. Privacy also is a concern in any form of electronic communication. And next, there is active listening. Active listening is the process of taking action to help someone say exactly what he or she really means or wants to communicate. Useful guidelines for active listening include the following. First, listen for message content, and then listen for feelings, and then respond to feelings, and not all cues. And the last is paraphrase and restate. Please. And there is constructive feedback. Feedback is the process of telling someone else how you feel about something that person did or said. It occurs in the normal give and take of working relationship and in more formal performance review session. Feedback is most useful and constructive rather than harmful when it offers real benefits to the receiver and doesn't just satisfy some personal need of the sender. Consider the following tips to become a better giver of constructive feedback. First, give feedback directly and with real feeling, based on trust between you and the receiver. And second, make sure that feedback is specific rather than general. And the third, give feedback at a time when the receiver seems most willing or able to accept it. The fourth one, make sure the feedback is valid. And the last one, give feedback in small doses.
On to the next point, we have managing conflict. Conflict occurs as disagreements on substantive or emotional issues. The ability to deal with conflicts is a critical communication and collaboration skill in teams and organizations. Substantive conflicts involve disagreements over goals and tasks, allocation of resources, distribution of rewards, policies and procedures, and job assignments. Emotional conflict result from feelings of anger, distrust, dislike, fear, and resentment, as well as personality clashes problems. Next slide, please. Next, we have functional and dysfunctional conflict. Dysfunctional conflict or constructive conflict moves people toward greater work efforts, cooperation, and creativity. It helps teams achieve their goals and avoid making poor decisions because of groupthink. Dysfunctional conflict or destructive conflict harms performance, relationships, and individual well-being. Next slide, please. Okay, and then we have causes of conflicts. First is role ambiguities in the form of unclear job expectations and other task uncertainties increase the likelihood for people to work at cross purposes. And then resource scarcities cause conflict when people have to share or compete for them. Task interdependencies breed conflict when people depend on others to perform well in order to perform well themselves. And how do we resolve this? When conflicts do occur, they can be resolved in the sense that the causes are corrected or suppressed. In that the cause remain, but the conflict is controlled. True conflict resolution eliminates the underlying cause of conflict and reduces the potential for similar conflicts in the future. Conflict management styles. There are 5 interpersonal styles of conflict management that result from combinations of cooperativeness and assertiveness. First is avoidance or withdrawal, and then accommodation or smoothing, and then competition or authoritative command, and then compromise, and lastly, collaboration or problem solving.
On to the last topic, learning objective 18.4, managing negotiation. Negotiation is the process of making joint decisions when the parties involved have different preferences. Stated differently, negotiation is a way of reaching agreement. People negotiate over job assignments, work schedules, work locations, and salaries. Any and all negotiations are ripe for conflict, and they are a stiff test of anyone's communication and collaboration skills. Next slide, please. Negotiation goals and approaches. Two important goals should be considered in any negotiation. The first one is substance goals are concerned with negotiation outcomes. They are tied to content issues. The second one is relationship goals are concerned with negotiation process. They are tied to the ways people work together while negotiating and how they will be able to work together again in the future. Effective negotiation occurs when issues of substance are resolved and working relationships are maintained or even improved. The three criteria of effective negotiation are quality negotiating a wise agreement that is truly satisfactory to all sides. The second one, cost negotiating efficiently using a minimum of resources and time. The last one, harmony, negotiating in a way that fosters rather than inhibits good relationships. Next slide, please. Gaining agreements. In distributive negotiation, each party makes win-lose claims for certain preferred outcomes. This emphasis on substance can become self-centered and competitive, with all parties thinking the only way for them to gain is for others to lose. In principle, negotiation, sometimes called integrative negotiation, the orientation is win-win. The goal is to achieve a final agreement based on the merits of each party's claims. 4 pathways or rules for gaining such integrated agreements. The first one, separate the people from the problem. The second one, focus on interests, not on positions, generate many alternatives before deciding what to do. And the last one, insist that results be based on some objective standard. Next slide, please. Negotiation pitfalls. The negotiation process is admittedly complex, and negotiators must guard against common pitfalls. The first is the myth of the fixed pie. Second, negotiation error is non-rational escalation of conflict. A third, negotiating error is overconfidence and ignoring the other's needs. The fourth error is too much telling and too little hearing. The last one, third-party dispute resolution. Even with the best of intentions, it may not always be possible to achieve integrative agreements. Mediation involves a neutral third party with tries to improve communication between negotiating parties and keep them focused on relevant issues. Arbitration, such as salary arbitration in professional sports, is a stronger form of dispute resolution. It involves a neutral third party, the arbitrator, who acts as a judge and issues a binding decision. Next slide, please. I think that's all from our group. Thank you.
Thank you.